Hi everyone, it's Miss Rodriguez here. So today or this week, we're going to be working on part two of What's in Your Heart. So last time we were together, I drew the details inside my What's in Your Heart, my heart. And I do love Starry Night and I love art. So that's what's in my heart. It's art. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to actually paint. And I'm going to use paints, but you can go ahead and you can use whatever materials you have available to add color. Okay, so I'm just going to turn my camera and I want to make sure that I have all my brushes. I have my paints, so I just put my paints in a container that looks like this. I cover it when I'm done with it and it keeps it nice and moist. So here we go. So the first thing that I want to do is turn the camera so that you can see what I'm doing. And there's my heart. And I'm going to set up this way where I have my paints right up there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a palette knife. And what I mean by a palette knife, it's not really a knife. It's just a knife that looks like this. And it's called a palette knife because you can paint with it if you liked. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my palette knife and I'm just going to look for the colors that I want to start off with. And I'm going to start off with yellow. So I always work from the lightest color to the more intense or darker color. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a couple of little spots of this yellow to represent those little stars. And I'm not too worried if it's too thick. So what I'm doing is I'm just adding these in. And what you can do is you're going to take crayons. So if you're using crayons, you're just going to add a little circle like so. And if you're using colored pencils, you would add little circles the same way. So I'm just going to add my little circles. And then right here on that middle ground, I'm going to add some, and I could do the whole painting with palette knife, but that's another lesson. So I've got my yellows in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean off my palette knife because I do want to keep things as clean as possible when I switch colors. I am actually going to take the blue and I'm going to start adding little dabs here and there. So I am using pretty thick. I could use a brush to do this, but I'm actually just going to use my little palette knife. And I'm doing a lighter blue, and then I'm going to switch to a darker blue here and here and here. So I'm just adding the color freely. So what you're going to do is you're going to use your crayon. And now what you're going to be doing is you're going to take your crayon and you're going to begin to apply. So what I'm doing with my brush, you're doing with your crayon. So you're going to go here and you're going to move that paint around like so. And you're going to get all those little stars that are in the sky or moons. I'm just going in a circular motion and I'm just spreading that color around. Now, you got to be, when you work with paints, I'm trying to be a little bit careful because if you noticed, I'm getting a little bit of green. That's because yellow and blue are mixing, and we know what happens when yellow and blue mix. Now, I'm just going to get a little bit of water, and I'm going to continue to add these colors here. And I'm going to make a little, and I'm jumping over the steeple and going this way. And sometimes I go up and down with my brush. So what you're doing is as if you had a crayon on your hand and you're just going back and forth. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the blue And I'm just going to move that around. So if you have a crayon, what you would be doing is you're just applying, and I'm really trying to be careful. So I am staying away from the yellow by leaving a little bit of an area. You can be super careful and stay away or go as close as you can because you're using a crayon. If you're using a pencil, what I would do is I would go in here now and I would take the side of my pencil and I would add a little bit of value shading. So if you have a pencil, if you're working with a pencil, what you would do is take the side of your pencil and just add some value shading. So you'd want to get like a light gray, okay? So I'm just going to continue to go in there. And I'm going to stay away from those little yellow areas. And the reason I'm staying away from them is because I'm going to show you what I will be doing later on. So this, just going to spread that paint around. Now, when I get close to that cypress tree, I'm not going to worry too much because that is going to be made up of the colors of brown and black, and I think a little bit of blue. So what happens is as I'm going, it's as if I'm going up a ladder, and it's much darker than all my other colors, so I don't have to worry about that as much. And then I'm just going to continue to go in there very quickly, and I'm adding those colors. I have to be super careful to go around the houses, but I want you to notice that I'm not really being super careful because once this dries, I'm going to be able to paint over it. So what I'm doing is I'm just adding those colors. A little more, add it in. Notice how I'm not too worried about my cypress tree. I'm adding this in. So he uses lots of cool colors. And Vincent van Gogh is known for applying his paint pretty thick. So if you see that I'm using a lot of paint in certain areas, it's okay. Now, notice that I went outside of my heart. I'm not going to worry too much because then I can always fix things. I never worry. I can always turn things into a happy mistake, as Bob Ross would say. But Vincent van Gogh loved painting. He painted really thick. He loved painting outdoors. So he did do a lot of plein air painting, which means he'd go out into the elements. Very textured. So I have mine. Now what I'm doing is I'm going out a little bit more. And this is what I meant when I said I wasn't too worried because I can go on the outside of my heart. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put away this brush and I'm going to actually get a smaller brush, or I could use this. So I love to use the fork to paint with, and I'm going to add all those little dashes in the sky, and I'm going to use a fork to do it with. But the first thing I want to do is I want to get a little bit of white, and I'm right around these little yellow areas. I'm going to add some, just going around, and I'm going to start adding those very cool dashes around each of these yellow areas. So what you're going to do is you're going to dip into the paint, get as close as you can, and what's happening is as my paint is mixing with the yellow, I am getting a different color. I'm going to go in there. Now, once my paint dries, I can go back over the yellow, and if I think that it's too green, I can fix it. But I really do love it when colors blend and mix. Okay, and I think we're pretty good. All right, so now I'm going to take the fork and I'm going to dip the fork into the white so I get a little bit on my fork, and then I'm just going to press and lift, press and lift, press and lift, press and lift, and I'm making a spiral as I'm doing it. Now what's happening is I'm going right over my cypress. Don't forget, I can do that because once it's dry, I can go back in and I can add the black on top of the white. Go here, press, drag, and I'm just going to make those little swirls. I can also go like this with my fork, which is really cool. So I'm just dragging it, and that's why I painted a little bit thicker than normal, because I actually wanted to take my my fork and I wanted to drag it across my paints. So it's almost as if it's a windy day. So I can take my fork, dip it in there, and just swirl it. And I'm swirling it across. So it's really cool to use. Swirl. Swirl. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make a little bit of green. And I'm going to go here. And I'm going to go whoop, whoop. And I'm going to make little swirls like this. Little swirls. And this is, I guess, the little shrubs. Swirl, 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 swirl. And I can fix things as I go along. So I'm just going to get the yellow right from my container, and I'm just going to go right over the blue like this while the blue is still wet. And I can do what we call working or painting wet on wet. And I'm just going, I'm making little swirls like so. And I think we'll stop there and we'll continue next time.